my topic today is Wabi Sabi, which I call Finding Beauty in Imperfection. And based on the introduction, I can call myself a work of imperfection, just based on all of the various physical things that I've gone through. But really, we all have an element of beauty in imperfection, because every day we're on this earth, we're aging and things are changing. And so I think it's important to embrace the idea of looking not for perfect, but for beauty instead. And let me make sure that, there, oh fudge. There. So there's a little moment of imperfection in advancing slides. Anyway, Wabi Sabi, according to Leonard Cohen, is the beauty of things imperfect, impermanent, and incomplete. It is a beauty of things modest and humble. It is a beauty of things unconventional. And the root of Wabi Sabi, the concept, is comes from Japanese aesthetic based on imperfection, incompleteness, and impermanence. And it's a way of honoring things that don't last, which is every single one of us, and a lot of things that we maybe over the course of our lives have watched things change, and buildings fall, and homes disappear, and all kinds of things, and just nature in general, the cycle of nature. But beauty, it definitely is in the eyes of the beholder, and my inclination is to embrace those imperfections. So when I'm photographing flowers, for example, yes, I'm looking for the perfect bloom, but I also pay attention to one that's maybe missing a petal or has a bite mark in it from insects and things like that. And you'll see examples of all of this, but it's what's pleasing to you and me that's most important. Again, back to the roots of Wabi Sabi, we can trace it back to the Japanese tea ceremony around the 15th century. And really the focus is about on the present moment. So if we look at Wabi and Sabi separately, the Wabi refers to a way of life, a spiritual path, the inward, the subjective, and basically spatial elements. So understated rustic elegance and natural simplicity. And then if we look at Sabi, we're talking about material objects, art, literature, the outward, the objective, the things that we can see, but also giving a nod to the temporal, which means, looking for imperfections or embracing and acknowledging the beauty in those imperfections, the flaws that come with age, as I already referenced. And this is just a scene from the Duke Gardens, Japanese section of Duke Gardens in Durham, as an example of referencing the Ode to Japan. So here's a chart of what Wabi Sabi is and what it is not. And if you look at the things that are listed on each side, you'll see more old, more wild, more informal. On the left, weathered, crumbling, recycled glass, vintage things that are found at flea markets and salvages, and not so much the formal, the beautiful, the perfect, the arrangement, the formal arrangements of flowers, things that are man-made. So that's kind of one of the ways that you can look at, well, is this Wabi Sabi? For example, if you were going to go, well, I'm going to go out and look for Wabi Sabi subjects. Well, you wouldn't look for modern and refined. You would look for things that are older, weathered, and whatnot. And this is just my ode from Lewis Ginter Botanical Garden, the Japanese section of their garden. And the light was not necessarily ideal, but in post-processing, I refined it in my own way to reflect that imperfection in a beautiful way. In terms of looking at overlooked beauty and life metaphors, these are some of the words that you might consider when you're thinking about Wabi Sabi. So we've already heard impermanence, imperfection, but also the idea of nothing lasting. Nothing lasts. Nothing lasts forever. We don't. Everything on earth has its time and place. Looking for brokenness, something that's incomplete, something that is right now, as opposed to spreading things out in time and whatnot. Simplicity, repurposing things, which is a trend these days. Leonard Cohen said, "Ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in." And I think this rings a bell for me because it's really about the crack. For me, Wabi Sabi is about the crack, and the beauty is the light that gets in. So what we need to do is we need to, in order to see that beauty, we need to let go of perfect. We need to let go of that forever concept. A great place to find Wabi Sabi is in cemeteries, which are overrun sometimes by nature and yet still beautiful. Here, I don't know, you possibly can see this. I mean, but nature has sort of embraced everything about this statuary, including a spider web between the head and the wings of the cherub. And this was a sign that what I found on a workshop in Georgia. And as soon as I saw it, do it right the first time, the first person I thought of was my father and the message that he would send growing up, which is do it right or don't do it at all. And on its own, that's fine. The idea and the message is to, do what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it, and do it right so you don't have to do it over. But what that message for me instilled was perfectionism. And I think that, sometimes it can play in our favor, but a lot of times I think that it will hold us back. And I can remember and recall things that I didn't do, that I chose not to do because I couldn't do it perfectly. So as I've gone along in these years, I've learned, and I'm still learning sometimes, to let go of perfect. And I think the better message in terms of do it right or don't do it at all, do it perfectly, is to do your best. And one of the reasons is because if you do your best, there's always room for incremental improvement. So my best when I first started in photography was not very good. In fact, it was pretty terrible, but I didn't know anything. And so that was my best. And progressively, as time goes on, the more we learn things, the better we get, the better sense of ourselves we get. And that also can show itself in our work. Here's a moment of in an old church, and I was with some friends, and one of the friends could play this organ, and I'm fascinated by the titles of the chords, the pulls that reveal a sound. And so I noticed perfection on the piano, and I said, well, what does perfection sound like? And she pulled the knob, and it didn't work. So perfection was broken, and perfection in many ways is broken because there really, in my mind these days, there is no such thing as perfect. So everything has an element of imperfection. My husband and I have a habit of acquiring and rescuing and rehoming kittens and cats that are sort of on their own. And these two are examples of imperfect beings, and they're beautiful. Buddy on the left, the orange cat, he still has only one eye, but he's still here. He's beautiful. And my parents adopted him, thank goodness. And Allie on the right, unfortunately, she is not here, but she had a really good, short, well-loved life. And I think that for her and us was the most important thing. So not perfect, but beautiful. Marc Chagall says, if I create from the heart, nearly everything works. If from the head, almost nothing. And I think the head part, where we're trying to be so perfect and so precise and so it must be this way, that's when we get blocked. And this image here, which is the center of a daffodil, happened when I went to a field of daffodils. There's daffodils all over, and I couldn't find anything. So I did what I normally do, which is sit down and chill out and just breathe. And in that time, I just poked my head into the centers of the various daffodils that were surrounding me. And this is the only daffodil in all the years, and this is film, so that should tell you something. It's the only heart I've ever found in the center of a daffodil. So in that imperfect moment, I found something that I've not ever been able to find again. So that imperfect led to something not necessarily perfect, but beautiful. So how do we get in that mindset of, all right, whatever happens, I'm going to go with it, and I'm going to see something beautiful in something that maybe is ordinary, that I would have overlooked and walked by because it wasn't just so. And I think the one thing, well, several things, we need to just, put a tamp down on our expectations and go out with open minds. We also need to quiet the judges that are in our heads about ourselves. We need to quiet the judges that we're thinking about with competitions and things like that. Forget about what other people think about what you see, what you capture. Because the first person I always tell people that you need to please is yourself. You are your first observer, first viewer, first judge. And yeah, not everybody is going to like everything that you see or photograph or the way that you process anything. But if you are happy with it, then the imperfections that other people see that makes them not like your work really doesn't mean a whole lot. And then the last thing is to keep our eyes and our mind open. We need to put on our noticers and walk through places not as a destination, but as a journey, which I know is very oh gosh, cliche. But we need to slow down and walk through places with open minds and not leave because the situation didn't present itself in a beautiful way, or at least the way that we were expecting. So here's an example of being in the Outer Banks, leading a workshop. This is during scouting, and get up early in the morning, very early, get to the beach, looking for this beautiful sunrise, and it's a dud. This is sort of the overcast, not so exciting light that's in front of me. And I'm like, well, I'm here. I got up, so I'm going to work with what I have. And this is, I think, about a 13-second exposure. I was set up for the sun to rise, and it did. It just didn't show in the frame. All of these tones were right there. And what I did is I just slowly, in that 13-second period of time, I just very slowly and not very widely rotated my camera and created this movement. And just, I left with something that I was happy with, because I didn't leave because the wonderful drama didn't show up. So if we open our minds to imperfection and possibility or potential, I think that that's how we get a chance to see something that we might not have otherwise even considered. So if we look for things that are ordinary, things that are broken, I'll just refer you, if you're curious, I just did a blog post on ordinary calling. So you might look look that up. But these are, these are fascinating things that happen on the side of the road when you're driving down the road and you see a broken down building or an abandoned gas station. There's more to this story here. There was a liquor bottle on the ground, and it's just abandoned. But there's something about it that calls my name. These types of things. There's an area of painted barns that are fading, that are going away, and you'll see some of them. But it was a broken glass on the concrete of the porch of one of them. And so this is a remnant of someone's artwork. Old Car City in White, Georgia is full of this kind of rustic, aging, disappearing, impermanent beauty. Right? And this is in my eyes. So whether you find it beautiful or not, this is more stereotypically beautiful. But the story behind the Donna Kay is that, this captain, the story varies, but the captain either fell asleep or, passed out or whatever, and ran aground, and that was it. That was the end of the end of Donna Kay. Eventually, Donna Kay was taken off of the beach in Florida, and so it's no longer a photogenic subject to go seek out. But the beauty is that it was there for a long time and made itself available by way
It's the only reasonable way to get there in a short time. You can't go and take a train or something.
of being parked. Broken docks, abandoned docks in the fog also lend themselves to Wabi Sabi. Frisco Pier in the Outer Banks is now gone, but it was a photographic mecca. People just came from all over to photograph these broken pilings, remnants of the past, of something that was obviously more vibrant and alive than this. When we go photographing, try to photograph fall color. We have windows of time, and sometimes the timing is just right for whatever it is that you're looking for. This is in West Virginia, Babcock State Park, Glade Creek Grist Mill. So I don't have any problem with the color that's there in this image, but there are a lot of leaves that have already fallen. If I walked around, not all of the scenes were filled with vibrant, full fall color. So I used motion and multiple exposures to make something that was not the best into something that I was happy with. Again, a different scene of the mill. There's more color to be coming, but can this not be beautiful? Yes, it can. And for me, it was. This was in the Outer Banks, and this is a sunset that was really, if you just did a straight scene, it just, even though it has a lot of color in this image, really just wasn't going to turn out to be anything super spectacular. And I'm okay with subtle and calm beauty, but I wanted to do something different here. And so what I did is I used motion, and the front part is a patch of marsh. And so I did a lot of frames trying to get that chunk of marsh where I wanted it and create sort of these layers of color. So not what I was seeing, but what I wanted to create and feel. There's beauty in old and abandoned. This shack in the marshes on Bald Head Island is gone. So I was lucky enough to be able to photograph it when it was still in the marshes, even though, as you can see, it had seen better days, but a few hurricanes made it completely disappear. And that's what happens in Eastern North Carolina. There are a lot of farms that you run across in back roads, and even on main highways, you can see glimpses of old lifestyles, the farming, the rural landscape. And there's something about it that I really love because I have a connection to farming from my father growing up on farms, and also just appreciating the life of hard work that is reflected in the farming. Farmers don't farm because they love to work hard. They farm because they love the land and the work. involved with it. So abandoned picnic areas. Some of these images you might guess are in infrared. These picnic tables there and the grills are no longer used in this particular area of the park on the Blue Ridge. An old, very sparse, very simple church that I had the opportunity to go inside and photograph. And for me, it's the simplicity. There's nothing formal. The most formal thing is the painted walls and ceiling, which is what you're seeing reflected here. But other than that, very simple, very old, and yet still useful. This was a meeting place that is gone. It is no longer on the road where I thought it was in Georgia above Darien. Hyde County, North Carolina, rural county. But these are the things that you come across, and you could easily drive by any one of these buildings and barns and old homes that are overgrown. You've seen this earlier. I've photographed this particular house with fields, without fields, with vines, without vines. I haven't been back in a long time, so I don't even know if it's still standing. But when I see these things, I find them beautiful. I find I'm drawn to them, and I photograph them. This here is in Saxis, Virginia, in the Eastern Shore area. Abandoned, no longer useful, but beautiful, and making use of long exposure. A mill up in West Virginia, no longer used. Side of the road, all rural landscape kind of scenes that I find beautiful. And remember, it's not, you don't have to find anything about them beautiful, but they do represent the Wabi Sabi concept for me. And you can apply it to different things for yourself, things that you're drawn to. Beauty and industry. So if you're familiar at all with the textile industry, there was a lot of it in the United States, and a lot of grist mills and denim mills and things like that. And this is an old grist mill that has definitely seen better days. And this is it in infrared. I wish that it would be restored, but it probably won't. That the scaffolding has been there ever since I first came across it. Across the street is an abandoned denim mill, which is now being repurposed. So, you know, that word repurpose, as an event venue. And yet photographers can go and photograph parts of the industrial side of the mill, and also 2 floors where remnants of what it was are still there. And so these are images from the Lindale Mill in Lindale, Georgia, and take people to this place. Look at those beautiful windows, the broken windows. Everything about this just for me screams, oh my God, you know. So, you know, it's not just about perfect things. Now, does this blue couch really, or the lights, do they match the concept of this Wabi Sabi? Well, this is sort of, maybe you could consider this sort of a yin yang, a balancing act of the old and the new. The sofa has not always been there. The lighting has not always been there. But when you share the space so that it can become still useful, those are things that you'll see. In several very large bins, cardboard bins, there are spindles. And what I loved about these spindles, and I was able to acquire a good handful with permission, but I loved that it said American Paper Tube Company. Knowing that this was manufactured, a product of America. And so when I got home, I don't know, during one of my, I'm going to photograph inside, I kind of tried to create some scenes. I think this Wabi Sabi might reflect better in, you know, a black and white, but I took all those spindles and married them with denim, which came from a denim mill, and created some images. And I do believe that the black and white works better. But you work with things and you kind of find your way around how to create a story that reflects what you're seeing, what you're feeling, what the subject is, and so those were some examples of the denim mill that is no longer, and it's never coming back. It's done. Beauty in nature on the edge of seasons, right? We have beautiful spring and the flowers just burst and then they're gone. And then we have the dregs of the flowers. But the dregs of the flowers, the dead and dying flowers, can be absolutely amazing in their beauty and in their photographic potential. These are two leaves stuck in a stream in the fall. They've fallen. They're going to be rotted at some point. This is, you can see imperfect leaves, end of a season, edge of a season, an imperfect, oh gosh, imperial moth. And what I found really interesting here is look how tattered and torn the wing is. But this moth was still not necessarily thriving, but was still alive and would no longer be gone, but it had a rabbit in its wing. So I have a tendency to see more than what I'm looking at. So it was the imperial moth wing, but I saw the rabbit in the edge of the wing. Poppies, the petals are gone, and this is what's left. Another swallowtail with a broken tail, still beautiful. Nice, very old, but brick and stone. Oh gosh, hate to say fence, wall, and yet nature thrives on the wall. Here's those petals, right? Spring petals. This tulip is on its way out, and yet dead grasses, fall color on the water top, shreds and skeletons of fall. And then this is oh gosh, I'm just drawing a blank on the flower, but I saw more than the flower. I saw a ballerina taking a bow. So somebody else might have said, oh, well, this flower is gone, can I throw it out? And I'd be like, no, let me see what happens. So if you're interested in flowers, tulips, I think, are the flower that dies and ages most gracefully and most interestingly. So when you get some tulips or any kind of flowers, just wait until they have really gone past and see if you don't find something beautiful about the way that they've aged. Fern curling. This is taken with a Lens Baby Velvet 28. 2 inches from the subject, which is why I love this particular lens, because it is versatile. Again, the edge of a season. So just some examples. Here's an example of a story, a very quick story. So I was at Freeman Patterson's for a workshop up in Canada. It was my one opportunity to be on his property, and I'm seeing nothing. I'm just creatively stuck. And so I take a walk in the woods, and I finally did what I said I tell other people to do. I sat down and I looked, and the first thing I saw on the ground was the dead fern. And my comment was, oh, that's great, because I'm creatively dead. I'm not seeing anything. And so I got that out of my system. And then I saw these baby pine cones. And I thought, well, in that pine cone is potential and life. So I created this design, but it reminds me of, when those moments come when you're creatively dead, you're in a stuck place, just sit and find something and move with it. Weathered time. So the most perfect example to me of weathering, besides old barns and buildings, are old cars and rust. And I just love the beauty of the designs of old cars, but also the beauty that is created in rust. And a lot of these images come from Old Car City. Been there like boatloads of times, and it's never enough time, I can promise you. But these are things that I remember. Some of you may remember locks like this on cars, you know. It was amazing that this lock little cover actually stayed open. But these are some of the things, you know, the doorknob stuck, the leaves hanging down, the doorknob sort of in a way looking like a partial face and crying, and then the other one on the right is a little annoyed. You know, we can add all kinds of interpretations, but look at the potential for the beauty that is even in just particularly the frame on the left. There's so much to be had there in terms of embracing beauty and imperfection. The Etzel is a favorite of mine, in part because I learned a long time ago my father had an Etzel. I wish he had kept it and let it rust in the yard so I could photograph it, but it's long gone. I did not put these leaves here. You know, this is nature that sometimes does us all kinds of favors, and it did so on this Mercury. But, you know, we take old things and we can look at them differently and find beauty in them. Another fading lifestyle besides the farming industry is the sea. The watermen, the fishermen, the shrimpers, everything on the water is so much harder and being so much more controlled. And fishermen love the sea. They love the work that they do. And their boats, you can see right here, they're on the water, but they are not by any means perfect. Look at the handwritten letters. That's an infrared, false color infrared, handwritten letters of the name of that boat. The interpretive image on the right. What remains? This is in Chincoteague. It may still be in the water. I don't know, but it's not going anywhere. And yet I find it beautiful. There's just all sorts of little stories on, even just in this frame, that I could parse out: the basket, the cages, etc., the barnacles. You know, there's no fresh paint on this boat. And yet, again, you know, I could repeat myself 100 million times to look for the beauty and look at it and appreciate it. But it's there, and it's a lot of times right in front of us. The dock's not great. Miss Jackie is probably gone. You know, when I look at these images, I think, well, the next time I go, will this boat be in business? Will it be gone? Will it be sunk? Will it be whatever? Mary Clyde, I'm quite sure, is long gone. But then there's interesting things that you can find that are also in the Wabi Sabi vein that celebrate that. This is that same boat that you saw in black and white, infrared, in a different perspective. What I actually saw, what was in front of me, but it was fog, and so I interpreted it in a different way. And then going into the beauty in the simple. So the simple, the quiet, the more subdued. Looking at that, you know, these wooden docks, you think, well, that's just a pier, but it's a wooden pier, and the wooden piers, when they're gone, typically they either are never replaced or they're replaced with concrete. So that's where the Wabi Sabi comes in. The sands, the winds blowing the grasses on the dunes, temporary and beautiful. Falling sands on the side of a dune, like a time, telling time with the winds and the grasses on the sands. Temporary as well. And then I referenced the painted barns. So these are painted barns in North Carolina. And many years ago, 20 years ago, actually, a group of artists painted these. And I have been photographing them for 20 years. And every year I come back and people ask, well, how long are you going to photograph them? And I say, until the last one falls. Well, this year, about 7 of them are gone. There's still enough there for me to keep coming back, and I will. But I find them beauty. I am just pulled to these barns for what they represent of a lifestyle that has since passed in this area, and in these barns are no longer used for what they were, but also that I know that these barns are not going to last forever. So I capture as much of them as I can, at least once or twice a year, because I just know that the next time I visit these barns, there's going to be another one that is not in the same shape, and that I can see the path of destruction and goneness coming. So that's that temporary. Here's one of my favorite ones, the end of a big long barn. I called this book hen, and then it became this, and then it was gone. It was burned, destroyed by a fire. This one here, I knew that when I stood in front of it, the light was harsh. I knew this was the last time I was going to see any part of this barn in any shape that resembled a barn. I photographed it in infrared because the light was terrible for color. And sure enough, the next time I came, it was completely gone. You would have never known it was there. So a lot of things that I photograph, I appreciate its temporal nature. And I think that's what draws me to a lot of subjects. I actually bring flowers into my house, and I sometimes don't have time to photograph them, but when they're sort of on their way out, I'm looking at them and go, oh, that's pretty cool. You know, it's beautiful. So here I was, my 50th birthday. I gave myself a few days on my own in Colorado outside of Denver, and drove the back roads by myself. And I kept seeing these white flowers. And I thought, wow, those white flowers are really cool. But being by myself and a female and no cell phone coverage, I thought, well, I need to find a safe place to stop. When I finally did, and I got out of the car, those white flowers did absolutely nothing for me. They were pretty, but what fascinated me were the big fat dandelions that you see in the first frame in the background. And I thought, what in the world? They're the biggest dandelions I've ever seen. They really are goat's beard. But had I not put on my notices, had I been in a hurry, I would have said, well, those white flowers, forget about it. I'm getting back in the car and I'm going. Instead, I looked further and I took some shots, and I got to the third frame, and there's probably more. But I got there and I raced back to the car, got my macro lens, tripod, the whole 9 yards. And I was like, oh my God, there's so much in here. And I never would have seen this had I not been willing to take something, dandelions, they're the end of the flower. But then there's this. Right? So there are things that we overlook because we underestimate the beauty in the stuff that is going away. And then this. And at this point, I was just, you can just imagine the kind of noises I was making, like, oh my God, this is so beautiful. And if anybody was, around walking by, they probably would have asked, are you okay? I'd have said, I'm so okay. It's not funny. But, that's the idea of appreciating the things that will be, are no longer. Things in antique and vintage stores, the top of a paper umbrella, a window in an old house, rust on the side of a pontoon boat that has been sitting in the same place in eastern shore of Virginia for quite a number of years. But I saw a surfer. Right? If we slow down long enough, we see all kinds of things. So for me, I see a surfer and a wave. You may not, and it doesn't matter. You may see something else. Look at the spelling of this boat's name. And it was flooding. It was more than high tide. It was flooding. And I'm walking around in boots photographing these things. actually where these images were taken, it's gone. Everything about it is gone, and it will be modernized, shall we say. These are dead crabs, skeletons, they're white. And I made a little story. So, this male was having a meeting, and, there's at least 1, 2, 3 females. Sometimes you have to, embrace a little bit of a sense of humor, and maybe it's a little twisted, but for me, that's okay. So creative imperfection tools, I'm going to say that the Lens Baby lends itself to not being perfect in terms of the effects that it provides you the opportunity to take advantage of. And so these are some Lens Baby images. Old sheet music, made to look old. This is part of a really a private historic shack that tells of a different type of fishing industry down on the North Carolina coast. Mending nets, right? All of that, all of these things kind of reflect stuff that here today, no longer. This is a building that is hidden behind trees, overgrown behind. And so I used motion and infrared to do something different. Same thing here, motion can allow you to take a scene that is okay and create something different that is more beautiful. So my imperfect blooms, I talked about how I like to, let them kind of go by the wayside. So here's just some images that are representing imperfection and Wabi Sabi. I should tell you that some of these, particularly this one, was the beginning of COVID, and my first entire spring in many, many years spent at home. And I was like, well, I'll be damned if I'm going to sit in my house while spring happens outside. So every day I would go and I would gather spring, I would bring it inside, and I would photograph. And so these are the blossoms, and I put it together, used a light box, and I collect old bottles, and this is one of my bottles, and some more of the blossoms done differently, again with the light box. Here's an example of the tulips. Now, the interesting thing here, at least what I remember, is that I was like, oh my God, I was so fascinated with all those curls of the tulips. And they're going away, right? You can see that the stems are no longer even green. I made some kind of movement, and all those petals that you're seeing extended out, they all fell down. So that was kind of the end of this session here. But between Lens Baby and still life and embracing things that are and will be no longer, that's all about Wabi Sabi. So this is a plant that is in the milkweed family. And it does have a formal Latin name, but the common name is hairy balls. And I was just shocked that when I split this open, it was so perfect. And I hate to use that word, but look at how beautiful it was. It's wrinkling on the outside, and inside was this amazing gem. And so I utilized this, picked plant and interpreted in various ways. The dead tulips, really dead tulips. And look I didn't do a thing here. I let those tulips do exactly what they were doing. And I just thought that they were amazing. Here, the anemone is on its way out. I had some old seeds that I threw on a table. It's a broken bottle, and for me, it works. You see the perfection key on either side of this image here. So you've already heard about, at age 32 and a half, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. Well, I'm not about to let that, I wasn't then and I'm not now, I wasn't about to let that experience go by without finding some way to manage the the very large imperfection that was happening in my life. And so I did a glamour shoot, and it was my way of fighting a very hard time of not being perfect. Before I was bald, I had the most beautiful, long, full red hair. And so that part was more traumatic than being diagnosed with breast cancer. And that sounds very shallow. But at the time, I was young enough to have that kind of attitude. During COVID, I would order in therapy. And so these are some ranunculus, and I was photographing them on the back patio. And I looked at the arrangement, and this yellow one is hanging down low. And I thought, gosh, that's me. That's me. And the image that was the before really reflected how I felt at that moment when I photographed the yellow ranunculus kind of hanging down low. But when I got upstairs into my office, I said, no, I'm going to make this low hanging ranunculus something beautiful, because I don't want to hang on to the to the low end of things. I've got to switch gears. And so this is what happened. And part of it is an attitude, part of it is a mindset, part of it is just refusing not to see something beautiful in something that is not. And so I think that we have a tendency to perhaps overlook ordinary things. There's just so many things that I can walk around my parents' house. They're 85 and 86, and I'm so thankful. They don't look the way they did when they were 30 or 20 or 40 or 50, and neither do I. But there are a lot of things about them and about the things that are in their home and mine that no matter what anyone else thinks, I am going to find the beauty in that. So my message here in ending is to encourage you to look for and find the beauty in the heart of ordinary, everyday things, because the truth is nothing lasts, nothing is finished, and nothing by any stretch of imagination is perfect. So I hope that this has given you some ideas on ways to look at things that maybe you have overlooked, have hesitated to photograph, or have hesitated to share because someone else wouldn't like it because it's not that word, the P word. It's about you being you, me being me, and just sharing and putting everything kind of in its place, which is all relative. So I just want to say thank you for your time. Thank you for the invitation. If you want to screenshot this, you can find me on my website. I'm on Facebook in 2 different places, Instagram. I do have workshops coming up, and you can take a look at them on my website. And I would love to explore thoughts or ideas with you. If you have any questions tonight or just in general, feel free to email me. And I'm open to answering questions now and in the future. So I'm going to just stop my share and see what happens.
Okay. Oh, Jamie, wow. You've left me with a lot to think about, and a different way of seeing and accepting the imperfection. So thank you. And yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, very inspiring for me. And I want to open it up to questions and turn on your video now. And she's offered to engage us in a conversation about imperfection. So I want to begin by saying, Sam, are you still here? Sam?
Gotta be.
I just hope he hears this. He
Yeah,
is
I'm
the
here.
one, Sam, you're the one who referred Jamie to me. Correct?
So he should have the first question.
Sorry, I can't recall. But
Yeah, well,
I believe it. I believe what you're saying, but I can't recall.
okay, because people do give me ideas and it takes me a while to work on them. I thought for sure that it was Sam. Anyway, somebody had heard you speak somewhere and that's how you came across my radar. So
Oh,
yes, thank you. And so, yes, let's ask questions.
I'm going to let someone else ask a question for the first time.
Yeah, Diane, go ahead.
Sam, Diane Brunetti, did you want to go?
Well, actually, I would just like to thank you.
Mhm.
I really like to photograph around my home, which is in Baltimore City.
mhm.
And I think you've given me a lot of ideas and I'm grateful. So
Good,
thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Oh, nice.
Um,
Thank you.
You all are closer to Longwood Gardens and Chad's Ford.
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay, so part of what I want to come back to Chad's Ford. Not so well. I love Longwood, but I went to the Brandywine Museum of Art with the Wyeth exhibit, and that's where I mean, I've done this talk before, but it really sort of inspired me that Andrew Wyeth spent his time, his life in two places. That's it, and so most of what he painted was on the Kerner farm or up in Maine, and ordinary things that just became beautiful. So, when I saw that exhibit recently in April, I was like, well, this resonates, it makes sense about finding beauty in stuff that is often overlooked.
Any other questions?
You mentioned tulips as interesting flowers
Mm-hmm.
when you watch them wither, get
Yes.
old. But irises can be fascinating too.
Oh,
Yes,
sure.
they can.
In
They
fact,
can.
one of my irises that I photographed 4 stages of got old. And I was amazed how many
Mhm.
colors that it started with. You could see, well, with the macro lens sees them with such intensity. That is the beauty you don't see in a fresh flower.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, just about any flower, but certain ones, just sort of wither with grace.
yes.
And tulips definitely are one of them. The ranunculus also, anemones, just a lot really do. Someone is in the chat asking what my favorite lens baby is, and I would say that probably the Velvet 56. It was not my first, but it's in my bag all the time. And how many do I have? Several roller bags and a cabinet full of them, so a lot.
Gosh.
So what does the lens baby help you do that other lenses don't?
Well, for example, I can photograph macro or close up, for example, with some help with diopters and such. But like, for example, the Velvet 56 has an overall glow that you wouldn't necessarily get with a macro lens. So each lens baby has a different effect that it gives, and you see it through the lens, through the viewfinder. So that's where I can be in the moment and take something that, is interesting as a macro subject, but it becomes more interesting, at least for me, because the one thing I've figured out and realized and accept is that I'm not a documentarian. I'm an interpreter. I think we all are to a degree, but I'm not so worried about all of the details being, precise. I'm looking more for how does it feel? How does it make me feel, whatever I'm photographing? And I know when I've succeeded because I can see not just the lens baby, but I can see and feel that I've made that connection, not 100% every time, but enough to say, okay, I can leave now.
Thank you so much for bringing back to our attention that you don't have to take photos for competition, right? You take photos for yourself.
Yes.
You should feel happy with every photo that you take.
Yeah, and the reason I mentioned that is because I do, I lead workshops, and there are a lot of people who are in camera clubs and are looking for competition images. This is, and I'm like, okay, stop it, because you're going to miss out on what's right in front of you if all you've got in your radar is what's going to work for the camera club, right? And so sometimes maybe I'll say, okay, so get it out of your system and then just forget about the camera club, just do you. But I also know that if I'm photographing and I'm trying to do something specific, and I have a specific reason, it doesn't always come easy because I'm trying to force something. And I just, so for me, I don't really enter a whole lot of competitions because, photography is my therapy. That's how I came into it. It's my therapy. And so I would rather, have, if I'm going to enter a competition, it's going to be, oh, that one fits what I already have. It's me. It fits my theme that I've already done. Rather than try to fit that, square peg in a round hole. That effort doesn't work for me because I need to photograph, and I need to photograph for me first. Someone in the chat asked, how much.
Before Jamie, I just want to interrupt and say, you've given me an idea for a program or some kind of evening where we share. It's going to be called Do You.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, and before you go on, I want to say on behalf of all square pegs out there, I salute you.
Thank you. Thank you. Someone asked, how much post-processing do I typically do on my images? I will, it varies. It's not that I don't like sitting at the computer, but if I can do everything I can in the field, or as much as I can in the field, get it right in the field, I'd rather be photographing and spend that time refining there, so that when I get on the computer, I'm doing not necessarily minimal, but I'm doing what I feel the image needs to express my vision. So sometimes I use textures, not all the time. And sometimes I'm a Photoshop user. So in terms of, being able to just make the tweaks in Adobe Camera Raw and not feeling like I have to do more in Photoshop. I don't use Lightroom except to resize. And that's because of a bad experience when everybody told me I should use Lightroom, and it was a disaster. So, but Lightroom and Adobe Camera Raw are just about mirror images now in terms of the process. So it doesn't matter, but I try to do as much in the field as possible. So that when I get to the computer, I'm doing my interpreting for that particular moment.
Well, we're getting a lot of thank yous and everything. Somebody was just starting to talk. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to thank you for answering my question.
Thank you.
I have a question. Have you done any YouTube videos on Lens Baby or the magazine that you can subscribe to? Because I've looked like I've seen your work somewhere.
Yeah, so I've written several blogs that have been on their newsletter series, and then they had a conference. I don't know, maybe it was either last year or the year before in like November, December, shoot
I
extraordinary.
saw that. I saw that. You're the reason why I got the Velvet 56, and I love
Oh
it.
my
I have
gosh.
several. Yes,
Mentor
I
mentee.
saw
There
you.
you go.
Yes, yes. Thank you for that. I
You're
really enjoy
welcome.
it.
You're welcome.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I love it. I love all of them, but you know, I wrote besides the Velvet 56, which is almost always in my bag, I just rotate the rest of
Right.
them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Guy looks like he showed himself. Do you have a question, Guy? You have to follow your sister, of course.
Oh, of course not. No. Don't need it. I could take imperfect pictures with the lenses I have.
You sure can.
Yep.
Sure can. We all can.
I have
So-
done many.
I
You
salute
know,
all.
but that's the thing. The Wabi Sabi imperfection is intentional,
Mhm.
right? Sometimes we have those images that we didn't intend and there were accidents and you're like, oh, well, okay, that works. But it wasn't what you had in mind. Maybe it was just, that somebody bumped your camera and it created this amazing thing. But, yeah, we all take bad pictures.
Yep.
/ imperfect.
Mhm.
Here's
Imperfect.
the thing, Jamie. Instead of talking about those tulips as dead flowers,
Uh-huh.
talk about them as just declining.
Declining.
Yeah. Because they look
Well-
they look so much like that guy in my bathroom mirror, you know?
Well,
Okay.
we can put all kinds of labels on those flowers.
Tom,
But,
I'll put off his mute. Tom, do you want to say something?
Who, me? No.
Yeah, you're the only Tom here, I think.
Okay, anybody else?
So would a lens baby fit any camera? Are you using a Sony?
I'm actually a Nikon shooter. But
Ah,
yeah, they have babies for just about every camera mount.
oh,
Yeah.
okay. I've never used a lens baby.
Well, I think it depends on your style of shooting and how you like to see your work presented. If you like everything to be, sharp and leaning more toward the documentary, not that that's I'm not saying documentary is boring, but there's a different style. It's just a different style of photographing. If you lean toward the creative, artsy fartsy, woo woo, all those little words, or if you have any inkling of that, then probably a Velvet 56 would be good because you can shoot at f5.6, f8, and by f8, the overall glow disappears, and so it's a straight lens through to the smaller apertures. But you get your artsy fartsy woo woo glow in the lower apertures, f4, for example, down to I think it's f1.6.
Why do you use those words? They don't sound very positive.
What words?
I love
Well,
woo woo.
I was going to say that I took a class in street photography and there is online. So there was a group of us, one woman, I think, who lives in Chicago. She does street photography with a lens baby and it's so creative. She's a very creative person, but she's capturing sort of human life on the street through a lens baby. And it's amazing work.
So who am I looking at? Ola?
Yes.
Okay. So if you don't like some of the words, how about ethereal?
Oh, no, it's not that I don't like them. My late husband used the word artsy fartsy
Uh-huh.
in reference to the movies that I liked.
Oh,
So
okay.
I got it. It wasn't very positive.
Well, I mean it in a positive way.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. No, I have nothing against anything that is out of the ordinary.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And Jamie, again, thank you for just a spectacular presentation. And
Thank
Yeah.
you.
yes, as you see, people are saying thank you
Thank you.
in the chat room. And yes, yes. So thank you again.
Thank you.
And
Thanks for the
yeah.
invitation. And yeah, anyone wants to reach out later, feel free to shoot me an email.
Yeah, you've
I'm
got
already connected on Instagram.
Okay, great.
and your website is really a wonderful website. And your blogs, I just want to put that out. You had mentioned your blogs and they're wonderful. So
Great.
yeah, it's not just one blog like many people write just one blog. It's a whole series of them. So
Yeah,
Where's
and
the
I
website?
I offer them just once a month. So I have a newsletter. And if you sign up for my newsletter, you're only going to get 12, no more than 12 a year. But
That's good.
you won't get any if I don't write a blog. Because my philosophy is that I want to give something before I ask for something.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, they're musings, and I share them.
So delightful. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for sharing your
Oh.
philosophy and your art with us.
yeah.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Diane.
Have
That
a
was
great
nice.
evening.
Yes. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.